Okay, good evening, everyone. Today is the 6th of November, 2024. I want to welcome everyone to the Foundations of Angel Wing Part Number 5 workshop. This is a technical presentation. So just as a quick review of some basic ideas, that the Foundations of Angel Wing volume number 1, is 813 pages long. It is available as a PDF. If you want the PDF version, just let me know. I'll send it to you. There's no charge for that. The bigger volume is also available, and it's cheaper if you get it from Angel Wing. It's $25. We can get that shipped directly to your home, or if you just want the PDF, that's fine. There's no charge for that, certainly. So the Foundations of Angel Wing research material in the volume 1 is about the question about the self-mastery. But before self-mastery can even really be discussed in a more technical sense, there is the more enduring question about the self. What am I? Who am I? As I stated just a moment back, that this is a technical workshop. It is a bit intricate. I will try to break things down as clearly as possible. And if anyone has any comments who are, online or questions or whatever, just please do interrupt and ask me. All right, so we're going to continue here from pretty much, if I remember properly, from where we left off last time. So you can see on the slide here that there's a distinction between selfhood and subjectivity. Okay, so meaning what? It's crucial to exercise caution and not conflate the idea of possessing a self or selfhood with the broader concept of subjectivity. The two, albeit intertwined, represent two distinct philosophical constructs. Subjectivity alludes to the overall realm of the individual thoughts, feelings, and perspectives, encompassing a breadth of experiences beyond just the self. So there are two ideas here. When we use the word self, that refers to the individual's, let's say myself, individual's awareness of his or her unique existence and identity. Isn't that so? That there is a uniqueness of my existence, of my identity. It encompasses the sense of being a distinct, autonomous person with specific thoughts, feelings, experiences that define who we are. Right? So this is one of the notions of self, or one of the ways to understand intellectually, philosophically, what is meant by the self. Right? So when we use that word, the self, theoreticians and philosophers are talking about the individual's awareness of his or her unique existence and identity. Isn't it so? When I think of myself as a unique being, as having my own identity. This individual awareness encompasses the sense of being a distinct person, that I am a distinct person from someone else. I am an autonomous person from another being, another person, another human being. I have my own specific thoughts, specific feelings, specific experiences. And when I pull all that together, that defines who is Sachin Karnik. That defines me. So the word self, as per the researcher Moran 2000, I think this is a bit of a review from last time, but we want to kind of, jumpstart our engines here before we go further. It's very interesting. This is a way to understand and way to talk about it at a more constructual level, at a more construct level, what is meant by the self. All right, now selfhood, let's talk about that. Selfhood, the concept refers to one's personal identity or individuality. It is the core understanding of oneself as separate from others and from external world, emphasizing one's distinct traits, beliefs, and values. So the self has selfhood. I can be using the language very carefully. So these kinds of distinctions we don't make in our usual conversations with each other as human beings in our society. That's why this is the technical workshop. I would venture to say this is at master's degree level or above in general. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have those degrees, but still, it's at that level. So the concept of selfhood is one's personal identity or individuality. It is the core understanding of oneself, as separate from others and from the external world. There's a separateness. There's a sense that I am my own being. I have my own autonomy. And there's emphasis, emphasizing one's distinct traits, beliefs, and values. Right? So this is self and selfhood. Okay. Now, having said that, there is now the word subjectivity. Subjectivity is a broad philosophical concept that includes the entirety of personal experiences, thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. I have so many experiences of all kinds in life. So do you. So many feelings, thoughts, our usual model, the TEMDE, thought, emotion, memory, desire, energy. This is all part of the subjectivity. It extends beyond individual identity to capture the full range of an individual's internal life and experiences. Is there a range of internal life? Yes. It's a massive amount of experience internally that it goes on, moment to moment, minute to minute, hour to hour, etc. No doubt about that. It's a tremendous range of experience. And it reflects then my own perspective, interpretations, etc. That is called subjectivity. So this researcher, Morin, 2000, in his articles, he makes this distinction between two intertwined constructs. That they are connected together, but they are still separate or distinct philosophical constructs: self and subjectivity. It's quite amazing. Just as a quick reminder, what's a philosophical construct? It's an abstract idea or framework developed in philosophy to explain complex phenomena or concepts or phenomena. In this context, selfhood and subjectivity are treated as distinct philosophical constructs, each offering a unique perspective on the nature of personal identity and experience. Right? Remember the original presentation, the first and second presentations on construct? We have them recorded, so I won't repeat what all that is here. But that's why we needed that initially, to understand the fact that that when we use this word self and selfhood and subjectivity and my subjective perspectives and all, these are all constructs where the intellectuals, the intellect of researchers is used to try to understand the phenomenon of the self. Okay, very interesting. The word conflation, what does that mean? The merging or blending of two concepts that are actually distinct or should remain distinct. I mean, you could say should, or you could say that. We could say simply that they are distinct as concepts, but they may not be as distinct as we think. So here, there's a risk of combining or confusing selfhood and subjectivity. And this all depends on how it's construed, how it's defined. I just gave a brief overview of how they could potentially be defined. Right? So this is how researchers have come to some consensus of how to talk about selfhood and subjectivity. Even though they serve as different conceptual frameworks, they have a conceptual purpose, and that's what it is. If I want to talk about my subjective experiences, I have to conceptually think of it in a bit of a different way than just the self. So these terms collectively emphasize the importance of recognizing the distinct but interconnected roles of the selfhood and subjectivity in understanding individual identity and experience. Now, I want to give some time for some conversation with this, because if I keep going with it, everyone's mind will turn to jelly. That's what will happen. There's so many intricate ideas. We've covered a lot already. I want to talk about it some more, reflect on it some more, give you an opportunity to go into it, because this is not the kind of thing where it's just my covering material, as I mentioned before. There's quite a bit involved in it, and there's a lot of other ideas that are coming up that are more constructs, more expansion of this further. But we need to be able to digest what we've talked about so far before going further. So I want to give each of you who are online an opportunity to reflect on this, your thoughts, your comments on this. I'll give you some of my comments on this also, and then we can kind of go from there. And if you want me to just go on, I'll be happy to. That's perfectly fine also. So anything you want to say, please, you may share anything from any perspective at all. Yes.
Trying to recover from fixing my speaker, so I kind of was not grasping everything from the very beginning. So I don't mind if you continue on, or if Suparna, you want to step in here.
Yeah, and I have some commentary on this, which I want to share with you. But before I do that, I want to give both of you an opportunity to talk about this first.
No, you can go ahead, Sachin. I don't have anything to add right at this moment.
Okay, all right, then let's continue. So some of my thoughts on this. Again, remember that the words are only on the surface. Constructs and ideas, they're good. It's a good beginning. Our day-to-day actual experience is what this is all about. If we're going to move towards self-discovery, if I want to discover who I am, what I am, my subjective experiences are real. They're part of my life. I mean, there's all kinds of experiences through our senses, through our interactions with others. There's the extension with others. There's connection with others. But the question still becomes, what is it that's creating the separation? That I feel I am separate from another person, and that is needed for functioning in this world. That is how selfhood is created. And there is meaning for that. There's value for that. If it wasn't there, we would not be able to live the kind of life we have now. We just wouldn't. Our sense of individuality and separateness is absolutely at the foundation of living in the material world. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to live in the material world, given the entire structure of the material world. And that's what's interesting about it. We don't live in some other kind of world where our individual identity doesn't exist. And what would it even mean to live in such a world using words like we or I, or those words wouldn't have any meaning at all. And it's very interesting. Is our identity just a fabrication? We talked about this a bit before in some earlier presentation. Is it just some emergent phenomena of the brain, the mind, etc.? Or truly, is it having a distinctive qualitative separateness that gives us our own sense of uniqueness, and that has significant purpose, meaning it has significant value, or another way to put it, that's the way we exist in the material world. We don't exist as a homogeneous mass of fluid or some kind of a homogeneous, undifferentiated mass. We don't exist that way. Even though maybe we are part of such a substratum, call it consciousness, call it the substratum of reality, call it God or the divine being or the ground of being, could be. Many people have said that that's what we really are, or we are part of that undifferentiated ground. It very well could be, but our sense of individuality, our experience of the self as an individual, distinct being from all others, as a construct in philosophy and psychology, to understand why is that the case, where did it come from, what is its purpose. These are all subsequent, more in-depth questions, but it begins with the acknowledgement that there is a distinct individualized identity and a sense of self and selfhood. So we have three terms here: self, selfhood, and subjectivity. And this is right from the very first 2 or 3 paragraphs of the Foundation's book, starting in the very first section, chapter 1. So I have quoted here for you this, in fact, what you see on the screen here on the slide, which is the main on the left, main piece on the left, is directly from the Foundation's book. This is exactly from there, and this is the researcher Morin, 2000. He's talked about this construct distinction, and then on the right you will see I have done some additional exposition on that to try to understand it and try to present it in a little better way. And then the next slide is shown on top there also. So it's fantastic. If we really probe into this, we find that actually our subjective experience has a lot more content than just the self. The self meaning the psychological sense of me, the individualized self. So remember, so if you look at these two definitions here, right? So the individual's awareness of their unique existence and identity. Let's review that, get it in our mind, because it's not about just my covering. I have 26 slides here just for today. I mean, there's no way we're going to cover that many, but I always like to do a thorough preparation. So do I have unique existence and unique identity? Of course. Obviously we do. And that there is great significance in that. As much as we many times in our programs talk about the oneness of existence, the oneness of all beings, which also is a great possibility. But there is, in terms of the research constructs in the path towards the discovery of the self, there are definitely, there is this unique existence and our sense of unique identity. And that's why this is, again, I'm putting this technically now to really get even more technical about it, or more in depth as such, the sense of being distinct and autonomy. Where does it come from? Now, see, these are the kinds of questions that we would probe in a lot of depth to eventually try to discover and unravel the mysteries of the self, and eventually what is self-mastery. That will come much later on. First, we need to really unravel carefully, and this is a scholarly pursuit here. The general public may not resonate with this, so I'm just mentioning that again because I don't want there to be a misunderstanding. That there is autonomy. I am an autonomous person. Well, why? Why am I am I really an autonomous person, or am I just like an AI? We talked about that before also, the question of free will. But the autonomy that we have has its own feel to it, has its own qualitative, subjective feel to it in the context and in connection with the whole range of individual experiences, internal experiences that are so broad that they allow me to reflect on them, and it gives me personal perspective and interpretation. I'm trying to not make this really too intricate. See, I'll put it this way. How can I reflect on my perspective, or how can I even have a perspective unless there is the individualized existence and identity, my core understanding of myself as a separate being from others, until and unless I have that, I will not be able to reflect on my own subjectivity. How can that be? That's a question. You see, so in a nutshell, we can say that there is great value to the individualized experience. There is potentially the great appreciation of that individualized experience, that of the me that I am, that I can be the way I am. It's a, rather than trying to degrade that experience, rather than trying to run away from that. All right, so having said that, let's move on to the next slide here. So on the other hand, selfhood refers explicitly to an individual's sense of their own identity and existence. It involves recognizing oneself as a unique entity separate from the surrounding world. This comprehension of individuality is what underpins the construct of the self and differentiates it from the overarching framework of subjectivity. I think we just talked about all that. That should be clear. The intriguing facet of selfhood lies in its oscillatory projections. And we're going to talk about this in more detail. The intriguing facet of selfhood lies in its oscillatory projection, wherein it often seems to extend outward from the individual, transcending the physical confines of the body. Meaning the sense of who I am has an oscillatory projective process. It's a facet of selfhood. And it's an intriguing facet. This is now according to Metzinger 2003. So this researcher talks about the fact that there is something called oscillatory projection. And what is oscillatory projection? There's a definition here on the right, number 4. You can see that. The idea that selfhood can seem to extend outward from the individual in a dynamic manner, potentially transcending the physical boundaries of the body. This concept suggests that selfhood has a fluid, projective quality that interacts with external surroundings. Is this not true when we deeply feel a strong emotion for another person, for another being, for someone that we really feel a great deal of attachment towards or involvement in? There is oscillatory projection, and this kind of language is really awesome. It really tries to pinpoint what's going on. It's to extend outward from the individual in a dynamic manner. What is it that I'm extending outward? Of me. It's an extension of me. It's an extension of selfhood. The idea that selfhood can seem to extend itself outward from the individual in a dynamic manner. Dynamic manner means what? What is that? It means that the extension outward towards another person, situation, circumstance, environment has a fluid quality, has a fluidity to it that is not static. So, for example, let's use 3 examples to understand this. Sachin is standing in front of a mountain. The mountain comes into my purview, and I say, what a splendid experience. I just have an experience of it. What is that? That is oscillatory projection. Let's use simple examples. Let's not make it, there are much more complex phenomena, but we want to understand the concept of oscillatory projection. We start with very simple examples. I see a mountain and I have a sense of connection with that. I just feel something. I see it. That's it. It's in my perception. There's an extension, I said, in a dynamic manner of my experience, potentially transcending the physical boundary of the body. I no longer just feel I am just in this body, but there is a sense of a extension that connects with the scenery. And this is subjective. So this subjective sense of connection suggests that selfhood has a fluid, projective quality that interacts with external surroundings. How amazing is this? How fantastic. Let's get into it a little bit here. This has profound ramifications for self-inquiry and for self-discovery, because I cannot recognize what is actually happening within me, within this extraordinary instrument that is the mind-body complex, unless if I'm really interested from a more philosophical and inquiry point of view to unpack all of this. I see that, my God, my whole experience has changed when I see the mountain. My goodness. And it happens so rapidly. It's dynamic. It's not that I'm just seeing a mountain in a static manner or in a objective manner without subjectivity. That's not the case. For example, if a camera takes a picture of the mountain, the camera doesn't have any consciousness as far as we know. It doesn't have any consciousness. It takes a picture. It's an objective picture. I see the same mountain. My mind also takes a picture. It records it. But I have a great subjective experience of the entire phenomenon. And it is fluid. It is dynamic. It is not static. And there is also the extension much beyond me living just in my skin. I have a connection that extend outward, and that's the whole idea of oscillatory projection. Oscillatory projection means that my experience of who I am is projected beyond the body, and it oscillates between me and the object outside. I hope your head is not spinning by now. So go ahead, Sylvia.
So that would still occur with something like an inanimate object, like a mountain? Because at first when you were reading it, I was thinking in terms of, person to person, because, like you can catch somebody's vibes. Sure. If you're talking to another human being, you get those vibes, you get that energy. Yeah. And then it makes sense to me, but it doesn't make sense to me with like a inanimate object like a mountain. Okay.
Well, there is the qualitative experience of the mountain. So, for example, when you're driving a car and all of a sudden a mountain range appears, there's a direct experience of it that right there. There's an experiential wave inside that opens from inside in connection with the object outside. That's what's meant by a subjective experience to begin with. It's subjective, meaning that it's my experience of, I feel, how beautiful. I give language to it, but it's not an experience where I'm still just completely in my skin without some type of an extension with that object. I'm not completely in my skin at that point. And this is what's interesting about experience while we're awake in general. We're not ever completely in our skin. It doesn't matter what the experience is. It makes no difference. There is an oscillation. Oscillation in what sense? Let's put it this way: you're driving the car, you see that the mountainous scene come up, and for a couple of seconds you're just like, wow, this is so beautiful. And you just feel there's a whole experience. But you keep driving on the road, then the experience oscillates right back. Now it's become, you don't think much about it. It's there, it's good, but now your mind has gone somewhere else. You see, so that's why it's oscillating. Our interaction with the outside world in the waking state and dream state, if you want to take it even at another level altogether, it is oscillating. It is not static. Absolutely not. Not at all. And it is, and on top of that, not only is it oscillating, it is there is a projection of the object inside, and there's a projection from the inside to the outside on top of that. This is not the kind of conversation we could ever have in just a general community. Even in our usual angel wing programs, there's no chance of having this conversation. It's only with very select people who really can understand or really want to go in. Otherwise, this is not for, your mind will start spinning long time back in this. You have to go really slowly. This is not about rushing through this material. Even to understand oscillatory projection, you could spend 10, 15 years of research in behavioral neuroscience to try to unpack what this is. And even then, you'll not get to the end of it. That's how profound it really is. I'm just putting it still in some simplified way.